Pretty sure you're in our time.
Right. Yeah, we saw them first. We'll get it. Oh, that's 5% there. And we're almost there. We're doing the bathroom right now. Brian chose. As you might imagine, it comes really care. Right.
Okay. Computer says 7, we'll go with that. All rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You. Roll call.
Yes, Matt Bugera,
I'm here.
Jamie Melky.
Here.
Nancy Rondell.
Here.
John Leo.
Here.
John Cox.
Here.
Motion carried. We do have a forum.
It's been a while.
It's been a while, yeah. We're out of practice.
Okay. Citizens comment. If there's something you'd like to address us about that's not on the agenda tonight, this is your opportunity. Kyle, you don't even have anything?
Go.
I do have something in response to the letter that was sent to us in the packet about MDOT's saying that this was really the proposal or the idea to reroute M119. MDOT is basically trying to say it wasn't them. So I want to present some of the facts so the public understands what happened there. So February 14th, MDOT sends an email to Lucas and I inviting us to meet on February 15th to talk about the M119 slope failure situation. We meet with MDOT at 10 a.m. on Wednesday, February 15th, virtually. Shortly after that meeting over, 15-20 minutes after that meeting's over, I send a message to my department head saying MDOT is throwing out the idea of rerouting M119. So 20 minutes after the meeting, I'm letting staff know this is MDOT's idea. Following day, I send an email to City Attorney Jim Raymer asking what powers the state has to take over a city road or to reroute a street. So that was me doing my due diligence. On February 27th, MDOT officials read the original article in Harbor Light saying that MDOT floats the idea of rerouting M119. In that email, they did not have any issue with us phrasing it as MDOT's idea. They said they're glad that people are thinking about it. We would need a jurisdictional transfer agreement. We won't just take Lake Street. I'm moving forward. We're looking forward to moving forward on this jurisdictional transfer. I respond saying we will respond with a letter with the council's comments and concerns, and that I've emphasized as a suggestion and just a preliminary discussion. He responds, there's no rush. There's no rush to have a response, and I respond saying, I'll respond with a formal response from council. I don't want to waste time if council is against it. So the reason I present this is because there's been a few people saying that this is really, the city staff for some reason has been trying to push this on the residents, and all these emails speak contrary to that it was MDOT, their idea, and we were just doing our due diligence. I just want to make that public record for people to have. So.
Okay.
You. Yes, if there's no citizens comment, we can move right into the consent agenda. Issues.
I got a couple of emails from council members just saying about some grammatical minor things that we'll make those adjustments.
I'm was good with, all of it. It's a lot.
So that big one this week.
So if there are no other changes, I would make a motion to approve as presented with the changes.
Yep.
That you're aware of.
I'll second.
Any public comment, Mayor?
Public comment on the consent agenda. Excellent.
A motion and a second, Nancy Rondell,
Yes.
John Cox, John Leo,
Yes.
Jamie Melky,
Yes.
and Matt Bugera.
Yes,
Motion carried.
yes.
Thank you. All right. Discussion section, item 3A. All right, so Colonial Inn, they're here to make a presentation on the sign that they have currently on city property on M119, on the south side of M119. It's been there for several decades. In 2003, the city and Colonial Inn settled a dispute over the sign's location and placement, allowing it to remain there for additional 20 years. That 20-year agreement expires this year. Colonial Inn is requesting an extension of that agreement or a new agreement to keep that sign on city property. They're going to present to council on the history of Colonial Inn and their request. And my recommended action is to discuss this request, and if it's something that council is in favor of, that we would go back with our attorney and Colonial Inn and work on an agreement. If it's not, then that settles that. So I'll hand it over to Brandy, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having us. I'm Brandy Messner. I'm the current GM at the Colonial Inn. And Mr. Brown, Mr. Tim Brown here is our current president, third generation owner of the property. And we're just going to tell you a little bit about the beautiful historic inn that we currently have. And we'll start. So we've updated some of our marketing to kind of move ahead. And we hired a new marketing director, and we just want to give you a glimpse of what we've been doing. So the Colonial Inn invites you into the heart of Harbor Springs. Our sprawling grounds are situated just 1 block from beautiful Lake Michigan and a short stroll through picturesque waterfront paths to quaint downtown for local shopping and dining. With more than 125 years of rich historic hospitality, we cannot wait to share this unique community with you. While you're here, you can expect top-notch hospitality, outstanding service, and an extraordinary local ambiance only found in Harbor Springs. A little bit about our history. Colonial Inn has been providing outstanding hospitality to guests since 1894, when Colonel Eaton of the Michigan Wolverines founded it shortly after the Civil War. His widow continued operations after his death in 1904 until it was purchased by Papa Tim, a World War I veteran. In 1955, Fred Ranker and John R. Davis took the helm and transformed Colonial Inn by adding the 2 plaza buildings to cater to a larger community of summer travelers. Ray Brown then acquired the property in 1968 after operating another successful hotel in the Harbor Springs area. His ability to entrance the locals while entertaining the guests became an icon of Colonial Inn with his signature red sport coat ever present. And then this is an original photo of the inn where it still currently stands now. And then we also have some great nostalgic photos of the pool area and some of the great buffet that they used to have there. And then we have a little bit more marketing coming up to show you where we are now and how we're kind of moving forward with that. Ray had always wanted his son to pursue a career outside of hospitality, and Tim Sr. did just that. But shortly after passing the bar exam and a short stint practicing law, he found Colonial Inn calling him back to follow his father's footsteps. His dedication to Colonial Inn was undeniable. Tim Sr. expanded Colonial Inn's reach in the community and modernized its offering to keep guests coming back from 1986 until his tragic death in 2016. Now, third generation owner Timothy P. Brown is continuing this tradition and is committed to expanding Colonial's operations and reaffirming its long-held ties to the community. We consider Colonial Inn to be our heritage property and have been working diligently to remind the community that we're here while enticing visitors to discover the unique and unforgettable experience that is Harbor Springs. We plan on remaining in the hearts of Harbor Springs residents and visitors alike. And again, just some of our updated marketing that we'll be putting out this summer. As our commitment, as you know, we're the only operational hotel within walking distance of downtown Harbor Springs. And we value this position and are committed to providing guests with the opportunity to explore downtown businesses. We've been working with the Chamber of Commerce for partnership opportunities and community events. And we're dedicated to sharing our history with the Historical Society and keep the rich timeline of this beautiful community alive. We recently hired a dedicated social media administrator to help connect community businesses through engagement and are working hard to highlight local businesses as part of our own unique charm. We're also launching a new website, which will feature local businesses and help potential guests discover our community. We consider both of these efforts of value to the community as a whole. We're also dedicated to moving into a year-round operation and have already started renovations at the main inn to help winterize the building. We see this realization by about 2025 and feel this expansion in particular will allow us to secure more local employment and boost overall business between local establishments open during the winter months with a downtown hotel location available to visitors. Our main objective in becoming a year-round operation is the connections between local businesses and our ability to retain local talent. And we got a lovely excerpt from Bonnie Culp, who's the Executive Director of Harbor Springs Chamber of Commerce, and she was just giving her thoughts on this prospect. And she said, "My thoughts in support of the continuation of the Colonial Inn sign at the top of the hill on 119. The Colonial Inn in Harbor Springs, only downtown hotel, and it represents the charm of days gone by. Historical, delightful, and ever lovely, Colonial Inn conveys the wonderful, relaxing feel of our city's history. The sign marking the way to Colonial Inn has been in its current place for many years and should continue to direct our visitors to the inn's location for many more years to come. In truth, when I first started coming up to Harbor Springs, I had no idea there was an inn in town, but I saw the sign. It piqued my interest into finding the inn's location and learning more about it. Without that sign, a simple visitor, myself, would never have realized we had such a treasure in town. I'm not one to say things should be done or left as they are, but in this instance, it would be a sad removal of a piece of our storied history and one that should not be ignored." And then this is the current location of, we were showing the location of our hotel and where the sign is currently. And then the next slide will show you what the previous sign was that was in place. And then this is our current, the next one. We weren't able, okay,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
We
So
weren't
the
able to
new,
do
the
that.
current sign is actually a white background with black lettering. Same place, same position, spruce trees on both sides. It's just the entire sign is now white with beautiful black lettering. And then let's see, we do understand that this sign is located on city property, and that obviously raises some questions in regard to its validity. However, we're not asking to install a new sign, and we're not in direct competition with any other hotel in terms of proximity to downtown Harbor Springs. Therefore, it's our hope that we may simply be able to maintain its position and keep it where it's been standing for over 66 years, and allow it to continue to provide overall value to us as a connector for visitors and to you as a whole community. So just some precedent that it has been in place since 1957. We believe the removal of the sign would cause immediate and irreparable harm, causing loss of patrons. Removal of the sign would mislead our current patrons to believe that the hotel is no longer in operation. Colonial Inn has maintained the sign in the surrounding premises for 15 years or more and will continue to do so. And just a representation of who we are. So thank you very much. We appreciate your consideration.
Any public comment on the Colonial Inn sign? Carol?
I'm Carol Leonard, 141 Snyder Street. I've spent every summer of my life there, and I've looked at that sign and I agree with them that if the sign disappeared, people would think that the inn wasn't there anymore. I agree with that, and I don't see any value to it. I also am delighted that they're looking at converting it so that it's open in the winter.
I just wanted to make the comment that our primary focus for Hassan isn't moving towards winter operations. And that's part of the reason why we're interested. Obviously, marketing is moving online, but in a non-tourist area, compared to Petoskey or Mackinac Island, most of our business is word of mouth representation. And especially in the winter, it requires people's knowledge and name recognition.
As well as the fact that we are not on a main street. So it's not very easy. You're not just going to drive by and stumble upon us like you would if you did drive down Main Street. So it really does give us a unique representation on that hill as you just come into the city. And so people can actually see where we are located. So thank you.
I got no problem with it.
Trying to stay. I think it's fine to stay. I have to ask a couple questions, just because I feel like it should. Do we have anybody else's private signs on city property? I mean, is there any other thing that, no, that
Not
we
that I
can think
know
of?
of.
Okay.
Not that I know of.
We have a sign for the ferry that hangs below the sign at Forest
Yes.
Park.
Yes, we do have a sign that says ferry.
Right.
They're a nonprofit, but yeah, that's,
So,
it's not
Not
a
a
city.
city yet, yeah.
I don't have a problem with it. I've looked at it for a whole lot of years too. But I just think we need to be a little careful. You know, if another hotel came into town and wanted to put a sign on city property, I think we somehow either have grandfathered this one in, which I'm fine with, obviously fine with. But I think it's something just to keep in mind when we write up the contract.
It's true, yeah. B&B being on the market, that will go back into the hotel business.
Yeah, so I just think we need to think about the precedent we might set. We don't want a whole bunch
That
of
was my
signs up there.
concern as well, but we have an opportunity now to retool the agreement. And I agree, it's part of the history. It's not, I don't think it's if it can remain, but how do we do it to protect the city? And to avoid a situation down the road where we wish we would have done something, since we're providing basically a free service to a private entity.
May I?
Yeah.
Comment, is that okay? Well, precedent would be that it was there prior to the city actually owning the property. So
Tell
the
me-
sign was there when Gerald and Gail Wells.
Okay, so that
It
was
was
their
already
private.
there,
I was gonna
yes.
ask how we,
So precedent,
ended up.
it had been there prior to
When-
that. It's been there since 1957.
so when Hoover's had that property.
Yes. it was
Okay,
there as
all
well.
right, that's right. I was trying to think who had owned it. I didn't realize that.
If I were to make a comment, it was probably Fred Rinker's gregarious and outgoing nature that set that up from the business.
So I think as long as we somehow address it, it's grandfathered in.
Right.
I don't have any problem.
Well, and Jim's very familiar with the history, the legal aspects, so he's kind of the ideal person to see how we protect it.
No, what I'll do is take this information, I'll take it back to Jim Raymer to put together some sort of modification of the existing agreement. Bring it back to council, probably for a consent agenda approval, if that's fine with you guys. Since you guys have no other discussion here. And then I'll get, obviously send you guys, but we're in drafts back and forth with each other on that agreement.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Get that thing open in the winter
Looks like
time.
a winter edition.
Okay, item B, noise committee findings and proposed code changes related to noise ordinance. So the noise committee has been meeting over the past 6 months, 2 times a month, except for, I think, January, while we waited for survey results. And if just to refresh, the purpose of the noise committee was to, create a list of ongoing issues with noise in the city, discuss and analyze those issues and if they're excessive for the community, talk about ways to mitigate that noise-related issue, and then review section 60.400 of our city code, which is noise ordinance control or noise control ordinance, and talk about any potential edits. So the committee consisted of seven members. 3 were public at large: Scott Raymond, Mark Revicki, and Bob Buckner. And then we had Councilmember John Leo, myself, and Chief Knight, as well as Attorney Jim Raymer, who recused himself from making recommendations as part of the committee as his legal advice to the city, but was there to kind of guide us along the legal process. I've included the notes and the survey results in your packet so you could review that, but the committee extensively reviewed that information. We broke down the survey results. We broke them down by district, by whether they were in town versus outside of town, year-round versus seasonal, and that played a factor in how we approached going forward when we analyze the noise ordinance. So really, there's two ultimate recommendations from the noise committee. One is to create a Be a Good Neighbor brochure campaign similar to the short-term rentals campaign that we have, and to use social media, the website, and other avenues to get the word out just about recognizing that some of your activities do have an impact on your neighbors in the community, and just to be mindful of when and how you do them, et cetera. The second was added to section 60.400 of the code. And there was several, there was about a half a dozen or so, but some of them were more significant than others. The first big one was to reduce the decibel limit from radios, sound amplifiers, and musical instruments to maximum 55 decibels at nighttime from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Currently, you're allowed to play your music from 70 to 76 decibels all day long, all night long. So the idea was to try to give some relief at nighttime from that loud amplified electronic sounds. Created an exception in the code for a city's noon whistle, because the noon whistle rings, but there's no exception for it. So it makes sense to have an exception for something that's happening right now that we wanted to keep. Create a process for the city to approve decibel limit exceptions at clubs like the Little Harbor Club, for example, or any other social clubs. Defining what church bells are, and continuing to allow the bells to be exempt from the decibel limits, but not to exempt music from churches nor electronic bells to exceed the decibel limit. So that was one big focus, was allowing the church bells to continue to be exempt, but to make a distinction between electronic bells and actual bells and music versus bells. Scaling back the time frame from when lawn equipment can exceed the decibel limit. Currently, the time frame is 8 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. on Monday through Saturday. Proposed change is from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday to Saturday, with no exemption on Sunday. The scaling back the time frame from residents personally doing construction on their homes can exceed the decibel limit. Currently is 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. daily. Proposed change is 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and keeping the 10 a.m. or adding 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Sundays and holidays, like it is for lawn equipment, lawn maintenance. There was one public attendee we had a couple members from the public who attended regularly. And one suggestion was that the city should conduct a study by hiring an outside expert to determine whether our decibel limits are reasonable and up to date. She expressed concerns with the 1976 EPA standards, that they may not be up to date. And she referenced non-EPA standards such as in the European Union. I want to double check this, so I went to the CDC's website, and they say that the sounds, basically decibel limits that we have are kind of in line with what the CDC recommends for health purposes. So they have 70 decibels over a 24-hour period is their threshold for health issues related to noise, and then 75 decibels over 8-hour period. So I think some things that we have done in our proposed edits, like slightly rolling back the time you can work on your lawn with lawn equipment from 9:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. can offer some relief there, as well as scaling back on music and electronic sound amplifiers during nighttime can help also provide some relief to that. So based on that, I didn't think that it was our role as a noise committee to venture down that path of getting an outside expert and consulting with that. That'd be up to council. That'd be a different mission. It wasn't our mission to study something that was what is, I guess, scientifically, something that we need to go through a scientific process, which is just not in our capability here. So those are the major proposed edits, and I recommend right now is that, council review and discuss those findings, and if you have any changes or suggestions or don't like it, that's fine, but I really want to thank all the committee members. They put 2 times a month in this, and we had some good discussions and back and forth, a lot of different opinions, but I think we came to a place where we thought we'd be bettering the environment when it comes to noise in a reasonable and fair way. So that's what I got.
Okay. Public comment about noise?
We move it back up to
To the edits.
the timeframe section.
Oh, yeah, right here.
I have a question about E.
Yes.
So it would be okay now to do it on Sundays from 8 AM to 8 PM?
I think it currently
Homeowner.
is allowed. Sunday, let me check. We have the.
I think it might start later.
Yeah, 10 AM to 6 PM. Let me just double check. Yeah, so right now lawn and garden machines are allowed between 10 AM and 6 PM. We just scaled it back on Monday to Saturday from 8 to 9, to 9:30 PM to 8 PM. And then what we changed was construction. This one right here was. Right here. Construction of their homes. Go.
If you have the red line, it might be clearer.
Yeah.
If you show the red line, it'll show the what it is.
So yeah, the red line for lawn garden machines, that's the only change we made in that section. 8 AM to 8 PM. And then residents doing personal construction. It was 7 to 9 daily. What we did was change it to 7 to 8 PM, Monday through Saturday, and 10 to 6 PM on Sunday to make it in line with 10 to 6 for lawn maintenance.
I have a question and I'm done. Anything
Anyone
else?
else or anyone have a comment?
In terms of lawn maintenance, what time does city start?
They
They get to work at.
start their shift at 7 AM. Normally they'll start working around 7:30.
I think something to give thought is if we're gonna start this at 8, if there's any way the city starts at 8 too, because when they start mowing the parks at 7 AM, it's just like having a neighbor mowing the park at 7 AM, mowing the lawn at 7. I know that's something you'd have to talk to Lucas about, but I think a lot of the parks are close to residential areas. And I know they do a lot of maintenance in the park, so I think it would be consistent if we started at the same time.
So we've had this exemption already in our city code that's been there. Work by or authorized by the Sea Harbor Springs is exempt.
I know.
Yeah, so that's what we would have to be changing, yeah, and that's.
But I wonder if
I
we
don't
should,
think we want to change that.
I'm not Lucas, but I would say that those guys they have so much, if let's say we get 3 days like today, and then they're behind, like, they have an 8-hour shift of which they gotta mow a lot of yards. That's, I understand what you're saying, but like, if they were to mow here, or they were to mow field behind us or something like that, I'm not, this, he could answer better than I, but I know that they get behind when we get inclement weather.
I appreciate that, but I also think if we're looking at the noise level, if that's what we're talking about, you know, especially in residential areas, it's something maybe we don't want to get rid of that exemption. Certainly understand they've got snowplow at 4 a.m. I mean, I get that, but to mow a lawn,
But you're talking one mower for the city versus 6 or 8 for a
not always,
contractor like.
not always, John. I mean, here they can run 3 and 4 mowers and edgers at the same time on these parks. I don't know what they do in other parks. You know, it's not worth making a big deal out of. I think it's worth asking maybe if Lucas they could plan to do things further from residential at 7 a.m.
Also the good neighbor thing.
Yeah,
Mows
and
on
then
park or something.
same, yeah, someplace where there are.
And they, I think they're really good at it right now. I think that for the most part, they don't mow down there till after 8, like, let's say it's on park. Because normally on Fridays when we're there, we see them after 8.
I wouldn't change the ordinance
Yeah, but just.
to accommodate that, but certainly from a good neighbor, from a
Yeah,
scheduling
that's a good
standpoint,
way
if we
to
can
say it.
schedule away
Yeah, that's a good.
from adjoining, you know, areas, parks that are adjoining residences early in the morning,
Yeah.
that's a
that would
good
just be
neighbor.
helpful. It makes it feel better for private residents too, to not get.
And I said, I wouldn't mind if it, Saturdays got included with the Sundays and holidays
I
for
think
the
that's,
residential and commercial.
I think it's hard for personal people though that work Monday through Friday.
Got all day Saturday and all day Sunday. It's just, you know, the neighbor starts mowing the lawn when you sit down to dinner at 6 o'clock.
No, yeah,
Minor change.
So 6 o'clock is meant for another event than mowing the lawn or using power tools.
So you're saying, Mayor, from
That's just my.
instead of 8, well, right, but you're saying 8 to 9:30, 8 to 8 p.m. on Saturday would be 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Saturday, just like on Sunday.
Right, and holidays. That would be my only thing I'd like to see changed.
Yeah. And there are residents that need to work on Saturdays and Sundays, but there are also residents that want to rest on Saturdays and Sundays, and this is just a little more nudge towards lower noise. I mean, a lot of this is more of an enforcement tool than it is from a practical standpoint,
Right.
so I'm good either way.
no.
Oh, I'll be quiet.
There are a lot of other things that we discussed at the noise committee that we just figured we couldn't really regulate. One, animals bark, like dogs barking, like those have been frequent complaints, but it's really hard to regulate that. Another one, you know, was vehicles passing by on Main Street or Lake Street, you know. It's motorcycles, yeah, some of these, we just determined were too hard, too transient in nature, to really clamp down with an ordinance change.
From a practicality standpoint, it makes sense.
Kyle, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have the Michigan State Vehicle Code, more basically that regulates that, so you guys adhere to that when it comes to vehicle exhaust systems.
Yes.
So, yeah. So, I don't think there's anything we can do as a city different than that.
Not practically, no.
We've talked about that though.
Isn't there some kind of ordinance about excessive dog barking? There's
Yes.
something.
There is
for
There's
excessive,
something
yeah.
already.
It's in.
Yeah, there's already something for that.
Yeah, it's still a little difficult because you have to be in the moment, you know, that those transient noises are much harder to enforce than something that's constant.
The other big thing was the leaf blowers. That really, when I read all the comments, that really jumped out at the noise. And they are very noisy when someone's mowing the lawn and there's 2 leaf blowers going.
It does annoy neighbors, I can attest.
What's that?
It does, it can annoy the neighbors.
Yeah.
I've been the annoyee. I've been the annoyer
The annoyer.
more than once. So you need from us,
Well, what I would ask, first I want to get another clarification is is for the construction residents who are personally working on construction or repair of their home. Do you want that to follow 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Saturday or well, or is that just for?
I think that makes sense.
And this doesn't mean that they can't do the work. It just means they can't exceed the decibel level.
Right.
So
Exactly.
that's, just don't want people to get confused there. Sometimes it's easy to be like, oh, you can't do work on my yard. No, you can.
Some
You
might
don't need to do
interpret it that
1,000
way.
board feet on a planer at 8 o'clock at night.
So I think what I would recommend is, well, my recommendation was to hold off and approve at the next meeting. What I can do is bring back these edits, bring it back to council and, yeah, approve it.
Sounds good.
Okay.
We had 3 civilians, I mean, us 3 are part of the Missouri government, but the 3 civilians donate a lot of time to help us, especially Mr. Rebicki, who lives up in the States. He's he's blind, so he gave a completely different perspective because he doesn't see a thing. And so all he does is hear, so he was really good.
There were some really good discussions.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you, council. There's the survey. It's a long survey.
A lot of input.
Yeah. All right, item 3C, boards application and recruitment process. 2 of the redevelopment ready communities' best practices are to establish a process for recruiting and applying for a board and outline the qualifications and those desired experience and background to serve on those boards. If you remember, a few months ago, council approved a 17-page handbook that was sort of like an orientation for board members. It was highlighting their responsibilities, their duties, their expectations. This proposed policy sets guidelines for the city when it comes to recruiting and appointing board members, which also benefits the public by giving them clear, concise reasons and guidelines for how to proceed. So, and we've talked about this occasionally at council, and members of the public have previously brought it up to me either personally or at different meetings. So this is going to be a benefit to the public as well as to us. But the recruitment process detailed is based on our current process with some modifications, distinguishes between direct and indirect recruitment. There's also a section on applicant qualifications and interests, provides a general idea of the types of backgrounds we're looking for. Finally, we also detail the application process. And we did discuss this at the Friday's RRC meeting, and just so you see what it looks like, direct recruitment talks about how we advertise the Harbor Light on our homepage, social media, the newsletter, et cetera. Indirect recruitment involves things that we may be able to do, such as having meetings in different locations to encourage other people to attend and participate, providing food and stuff at meetings to entice people to come out that would normally not come out, things like that. Applicant qualifications and interests. This was, best assessment of what kind of backgrounds we want to see on certain boards. It by no means says you can't serve on any of these boards if you don't have these backgrounds or qualifications. It's just guiding them. Interested people who want to participate but don't know where their interests or strengths are best suited, as well as help guides us if we have many candidates for a position. We notice, hey, we have a lot of architects on our planning commission. Maybe we want a lawyer, maybe we want an engineer or something. So to try to give the boards more balance and a more well-rounded perspective. So I just outlined those there really, and you probably read through it, but those kind of highlights the different interests and backgrounds and experiences we want to see on different boards. Then finally, we detail the application process, which is something it's basically what we already do now. Talk about filling out the form, when and how council makes appointments, talks about the mayor's role versus the council's role in appointing different members at different boards, then how the city staff will notify people. And some of this is more clearly defined in our handbook, but this is specifically geared at the recruitment and application process and expectations for before you get onto the board. So, questions or thoughts?
Citizens comment first.
Oh, Bill Mulder's hand is raised. Bill?
Hi, it's actually Dana.
Oh,
Hi, everybody. Hey, one thing that I thought about in reading through this is we don't want to end up with just all professionals on the boards and commissions, people that have, master's degrees in this or that. And chairing two boards, I just feel like some of our best committee members don't fall into the categories that are listed there. And Victor, you may have covered this, saying that this is maybe more of a thing for people who are applying rather than how to decide who gets on, but I don't know how we make sure that, we get a broad spectrum and not just like people that have professional degrees.
Yeah, thanks, Dana. One of the kind of ways we've looked at balancing that out is one is showing that either you have the education or experience in that or the interest in that. So on our citizen participation application form, we look at your background, your experience, and your interests. Here we notify that, the board should be composed of individuals with diverse backgrounds, opinions, and interests, as well as residents who live in different geographic age and economic segments of the city. So we're trying to hammer home that point that we're a well-rounded board. So that's a good point, Dana. I don't know if there's another way to phrase it in here. I think we covered it, but
I think we covered it.
yeah.
I think the document
That's good.
covers it.
Yeah, but it is a good,
Opening paragraph.
Yeah.
but yeah, the goal is not to be dominated by individuals with the same backgrounds, experiences, or interests. So, but Dana does make a good point.
It's a good point, but I think we covered it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think it's good.
That was a really good job.
Yeah.
I think it's really helpful.
It helps to formalize, but it's also kind of a good introductory
Mhm.
document. Yeah, I think it's really good.
That in conjunction with the handbook really puts it out for folks that are interested in getting involved.
And then below that would be the handouts that each commission
Right.
or board puts together with the details as someone is onboarded. So this is good work.
So for this, we would need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
John Cox, John Leo,
Yes.
Matt McGura,
Yes.
Shannon Melke,
Yes.
Nancy Rondell.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, great. The next item is selecting a harbor master building proposal, and I should have been more clear in the title of this. It's an architect for the harbor master building to design, to actually put the construction documents and design together. We solicited proposals for architectural services for the building remodel and addition. Just to refresh everyone's memory, what we're thinking about doing here is converting the existing public bathrooms to a laundry facility and mechanical room, and then adding on to the harbor master building on the west side of the building, public bathrooms, so facing the Marina Park, as opposed to facing the parking lot, so people aren't going through the parking lot to go to the bathroom. And that way it also adds in laundry facilities for the boaters. We received two proposals. One was from Elaine Kaiser, and that was for a total of $63,000 about. And then we received a proposal from Mark Bidet for Bluebird Day for his quote as 10% of the total construction costs. Of course, it's not really comparing apples to apples. We have a general idea of what it potentially could cost to do this remodel, and we're thinking, about $500,000, but we don't know. It all depends on how bids come back, what elements we add to the proposal, the design. So, but we're estimating at this point with the market and everything that it should cost about $500,000. We'd be comfortable using both architects. They're both well respected and they're both in the area. There's a different level of detail provided in Elaine's proposal, 4-page proposal. Mark is here in person to have questions. Elaine said she would try to be here in person, but she had her husband had a procedure to do, so she couldn't be here. So, but anyway, that's the proposals we have, and I think, again, like I said, both feel comfortable with both. there's just a different level of description and detail in Kaiser's proposal. So if you have any questions for me, what I know is here. Mark is here if you want to ask some questions of him, if he wants to make a comment. But the goal is to select an architect to do this, so we can hopefully by summertime have some, the end of summer, have some final designs in place, so then we can hopefully by late fall, mid-late fall, early winter, put out bids for this construction.
Mark, you have anything to add?
Well, I think Elaine would be perfect.
Very good catch.
Well, it's pretty standard in my profession to work on a percentage of construction. That's really standard. Typically, a project like this, it would start at 12%, would be, for standard level of professional care. And I'll do it for 10% because the design is essentially done schematically. There's still design development that has to happen. That means you got to figure out what this thing really looks like, what the details are, that kind of stuff. We call that design development. And after that, you roll to construction documents, et cetera. So it's pretty hard. I mean, Elaine, she gave you specifics. That's great. I just don't do it that way. I'll provide, with a percentage. And I do that in most of my commercial projects. So yeah, if it's $500,000, then my fee is 50, et cetera. It's pretty straightforward. Whether it's gonna be higher or lower, we really don't know. And that's one of the reasons I work at a percentage, because projects like this can grow and they can shrink. And if they grow, it takes more work. If they shrink, I don't have to do so much work, so I don't have to charge so much. So for me, it's really straightforward, but you're not comfortable with it, that's perfectly fine. I have no problem with that. The second phase of my proposal, I'll push a little harder on. I saw what was done, and a few years ago in my office, we did a little design charrette where the Harbor Master Building was in the paper a little bit. We all were drinking coffee one morning, eating donuts, and decided what would we do. And so we put together a complete design. I have it on my computer if you want to see it. But I put a little image of it that I sort of shrunk down a bit, and I was just, we could dress up that design, make it a little bit more historically relevant, sort of give it a stronger architectural presence. And we could also improve the plan a little bit, as far as maybe addressing issues like family bathrooms, which in the libraries and other public pools, other public buildings have done, there's always family restrooms. The layout is, as functional as it is now, of course, but we could enhance that and make it a little bit better. We can increase, the height of the building a little bit. I know we have to worry about views and stuff, but, we can overframe that. There's a lot of things that can be done to fix it up. And that's my second phase, my second offering, to explain that, where I work at the same 10%, but add in more design and then do complete construction documents and provide, construction administration and observation at the end of the project, handle the contracts. We're soup to nuts with everything that we do. And we do use AIA contracts. And that could be a deal breaker for you too, because you may not want to use them. But I only use them. I won't work on a project without them. They're the industry standard, and that's what we use. Both between the architect and the owner and the contractor. It's straightforward. It's just like working on a percentage. It's the way some architects operate, and I'm one of them. But Elaine is wonderful. She'd be great. She gives you just what you need.
Citizens comment? In the back row.
Got a question, I'm here to respond, but, the work's been done on this over the course of a fair amount of time, right? And I respect Mark's focus on providing a different approach to what the building ought to look like. But we've been around that road a number of times on this. And we also have to be careful with what we're looking at to spend. The waterfront fund doesn't have an infinite amount of dollars in it. And so therefore, that's what we ended up with the design that we have now. But I'm glad we had two great proposals on this, so I'm tickled Mark was interested, same as Elaine.
Okay.
Please.
Well, they're both, I work with both architects. They're both great to work for. I lean a little bit towards Mark only for the fact that he already puts in a large amount of time with the commissions. He's been part of, this process for years and things like that. So, but I mean, again, they're both, I work with them both. I do a lot of things, but I would just probably lean more towards Mark just because he's already so involved with everything going on around here.
Anything?
I have a question for Mark, just because I'm not in the architectural world very much. Would you be fine with doing just the design that,
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah, well, the first part really is, there's not that much design involved,
Okay.
just a very small amount,
Right.
as JP said. They come to this design and that's what they want. And
right,
so the first option is just simply doing the construction documents.
okay,
Got a little bit of design because what's drawn isn't real. There's things that are missing that are required by the building code, just planning, basic planning stuff that's off a bit. So I just got, but that's simple as right now, it's no big deal.
okay.
Then after that, it's simply construction documents, bidding and awarding, negotiating contract, and then doing construction observation and administration, which also includes, pay requests and that kind of stuff.
And the contracts you referred to, is that something we use at the city? What did you say?
Well, there's American Institute of Architects
Oh,
have,
okay.
and have had for over 100 years, a set of contracts,
Okay.
that are used in the construction industry,
Sure.
primarily commercial.
Okay.
They do have residential stuff too, which I also use, but the commercial stuff, they have, by far the best contracts because they protect you, the owners. It's very clear about what your responsibilities are. They protect the contractor because it's very clear what their responsibilities are, and the architect and other design professionals. If this project, stays at the level it's at, I'll probably have like one mechanical consultant, electrical consultant, a plumbing consultant, just to, MEP and structural, and it sort of, the contracts explain very clearly how things are done, who's responsible for what, when they have to be done by, and they create that professional standard of care that typically is not in most contracts when we used to build.
And we're good with using those, the city?
We've
Okay,
dealt with those
that's-
things in the
Yeah,
past.
okay.
It takes out all the what if.
It takes, yeah, that's fine, I just didn't
There is-
understand what it
They're
was.
rock solid.
Thanks.
I've been using them for almost 30 years and, never had a problem.
Pretty common.
Okay, yeah, I'm just not
A lot of
familiar
the
with that,
contracts
so,
I use
okay.
now are all through
Yeah,
that.
you use
So-
Okay.
Yeah, say Mark's got a good understanding of the building because he's been so involved in it over the years.
And I think that's valuable, and it's history,
Mhm.
a lot of history.
A lot of history.
I'd be fine with that.
A motion to go pick a.
I'll make a motion that we do Mark for the architect for the Harbor Commission new addition.
I'll second that.
Option one. Are
I'm
you,
sorry.
are you going with option one or option two? That he has two options here.
He's got this.
Well, just what we're,
Okay.
yeah, just, yeah, what,
Just
what,
what JP.
what we've already said we're gonna do, right? Yeah, no, just build a whole new building.
Sorry.
Is that option one?
Yeah,
To make
yeah.
the motion clear, okay, option one.
Motion by Nancy Rondell, second by John Leo.
Can I just ask a question before we finalize that? So even though option one, even if Mark was to present an option two, let's say, that didn't overly exceed whatever the projected cost is that still, like JB, would that still be something that board would be interested in looking at? If he had a concept that would, still be within the budget and, I mean, would that be a discussion item at all?
I can only speak personally.
I mean, I know a lot of things have gone into it, but
I believe personally we're constrained by the footprint of the existing building plus the addition that we've looked at there. I also think we're constrained by the roof height. I think it's very clear in all of the public hearings we had for the harbor plan, and as we went through these building steps, that people didn't want to see a taller building in there. Even they didn't want to see a taller cupola added to one of the designs that we had. So if Mark's got some ideas, and I've seen some of his ideas in other buildings around town, and maybe it's good. If they can fit within that footprint and the height print or height focus on it, would I be happy to take a look at that? Sure. But do I want to add on to do you feel we need to add on to the height of the building or to knock the building down and start over again? I think that's more than what we're looking for.
gotcha.
I would encourage suggestions from as long as we can fit it in. Looking at doing.
We don't have a set budget. We have a hope. We're trying to keep it under, I think is under 600,000. And, we're aiming at, with this, we anticipate it would cost $500,000 with whatever additions that Mark may propose. $50,000, maybe one thing for council, $250,000 more, maybe a different thing. So, I guess that all depends on what's.
Part of it might be, I mean, I'm not necessarily sure that there would be a cost differential. It might just be conceptual.
Right. That's what I would
And that-
see that kind of stuff.
That should come out of the discussion as you move.
Yeah, I
in.
just didn't want to,
Making it real, that should be a natural progression.
I don't want to obviously get going on this because we've been talking about it for a long time.
So maybe it's all right if he presents some options.
Yeah, I just,
We'll get started on it. We'll turn around very quickly for you. I mean, this is a very simple, straightforward project. If something else comes out of it, I'll certainly share it with you. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on it. The budgets are very small. If you guys had more of an appetite, of course I would. I've already done it. But at this point, you don't. So I'm not gonna swim upriver.
gotcha.
I'll just get it done for you. Okay. Perfect.
So I'm motions on option one, of course, being open to other suggestions, but okay, option one.
Yeah, we have a motion and a second, so Matt O'Gara,
Yes.
Jamie Melky.
Yes.
John Leo,
Yes.
Nancy Rondell.
Yes.
John Cox.
Yes.
Motion carried.
So what do you recommend in Lane?
That's what they were.
I tried.
Okay, item 3E. Last item. I know it's been a month since we met, but we can do another few more minutes. 2023-2028 clerical union contract. The city's clerical staff has opted to break away from the existing IBW union, which consists of our DPW workers and our electric department workers, and form their own union under IBW, but as their own bargaining unit. This would cover, we have planned for corporate employees, but it may only cover the 3 City Hall. The police administrative assistant may decide still to stick with the current one or go over to the FOP, which the police union is under fraternal order police. So there's still some, we're still waiting to hear back on that,
So
but
the employee gets to choose.
that's what we're still kind of waiting to hear back.
I'm just
on.
curious, never done a lot with unions.
Yeah, no, that's what we're still waiting to hear back from. Because there's distinction between a union paying member, but so non-union members, non-members who don't pay, they're still covered by the union. But once you choose to pay, you then I think have the option of becoming a pay member, then you have an option of voting, so then you can go where you want. But
Thanks.
if you're not a paying member, you're still covered by the union, but there's some,
But it would go with the position, right, Victor, not the person, it would.
so that was the position, the position would go into, but so that's still not completely resolved, but it's something that's minor that could either be taken out and switched to another unit or kept in this agreement. But so the clerical staff's main goals were to creation of a pay scale that was fair and rewarded seniority. Our current pay scale stops at 5 years. So if you worked here 5 years or 30 years, you get paid the same amount. So they really were focused on trying to make that more fair. And they also wanted a fairness between the union covered employees with regards to benefits. And I'll explain that a little bit more later. Our goals as management was long-term fiscal stability, as well as improving reliability and oversight, as well as creating more stability in the contract and in the office. So here are the main highlights and changes. The agreement length would be 5.5 years. The previous one was 5 years, but since this would start in June, it would be about 5.5 years, running through December 31st, 2028. That gives us some stability right there, having the 5 years. Our agreements used to be 3 years prior to this previous 5-year agreement, and the 5 years kind of helps keep it more stable and let the city know what it can expect for budgeting for 5 years out. So that's helpful for us. Increase the number of wage rate classifications from 7 to 12. Like I had said, the previous contract had 5 years as the maximum wage rate classification. We've gone all the way up now to 26 plus years as being a maximum wage rate classification. So we've changed that from 7 classifications to 12 classifications. We've increased and expanded the pay range scale. So the previous contract for 2023 would be $18 to $25 an hour. This would be $20.50 to $29 an hour based on seniority and that wage rate classification. We eliminated post-retirement health benefits for new employees who started after 6/1. This is big for the city because, you know, if you work so many years from the city, you get healthcare in your retirement, and that's something that just eats away at our long-term stability. So we also established a probationary period for new employees. Clarified it as well. We reduced and prorated PTO for new hires while increasing it for seniority. We limited the wage rate classification a new employee can be hired in at. Right now is any wage rate. We've clarified that we can't hire in anyone just at any wage rate classification. The biggest one that might affect the public, it all affects the public, but the city hall hours, one of the things that they've been asked for is a half an hour lunch, and to same amount of hours, they work 37.5 hours a week with an hour lunch. Right now, they would like to work 37.5 hours a week with a half hour lunch. And to do that would change your city hall hours from 8:30 to 4:30 p.m. is what we're thinking about. And one of the reasons that seemed doable is we don't get many people to come in after 4:30 p.m. We do get people that come in between 4 and 4:30. A lot of people get off of work at 4 and come in, but between 4:30 and 5, people seem to trickle in. Other options, you know, suggested were 8 to 4, or some start earlier and end earlier. I did a survey about 24 or so northern Michigan municipalities. Most fall in the 8:30 to 4:30 timeframe. Petoskey and Charlevoix are 8 to 5. We have some that are 2 that have moved 8 to 4. Some have different weird systems where they're open to the public 9 to 4, but employees get to choose whether they want to work 8 to 4, so they have 1 hour of no public facing time, or 9 to 5. So the city hall is closed at 4, but the employees are there till 5. They have the option to do that. So there's a lot of different arrangements that people do, but 8:30 to 4:30 seem pretty common, but like I said, Petoskey and Charlevoix or near neighbors are 8 to 5. So we've also tightened how and when employees can take lunch and paid breaks. We added 1 paid holiday, President's Day, for a total of 11 holidays. Limit when and how employees can use and take PTO. Increase PTO payout upon separation. This is one thing that matters. They work so long, and they accumulate their PTO bank, they don't use their PTO, and then they lose it. So increasing the amount that they get was something that they asked for, but we wanted to put a caveat that we can reduce that PTO payout if they just decide not to show up to work their last few weeks of work. That makes it so much harder for us to transition to a new employee if they just don't show up their last 2 weeks of work. So that's kind of a give and take there, that they'll get their PTO payout if they show up to work. If they don't show up to work, then they're back. That's reduced. We've also increased annual reimbursement for optical expenses from $150 per year to $225 per year. So those were the main increases. I did get actually a couple of public comments about, and from council members about the use of she and he and her and his, and we try to stick with one, and a lot of times contracts have something in the beginning that says he or she will represent, both males and females, so that way it's clear. It's easier just to use one for reading purposes and saying, instead of always saying his or her or she or he, it's just easier that way, so. That's the reasoning behind that. It's not a big deal either to us, it's just an ease of reading and typing thing. So those are the changes. I have provided the red line version as well as the complete version. It's up to council whether you guys want to sit on this for 2 weeks or make a decision now. I can come back with, I would probably still have to follow up with about whether or not the police administrative assistant wants to be in this one or choose another one, but essentially all the benefits and pay wage and limitations, all that would stay the same.
If I can just back this up just a few minutes, just a
Yeah,
few
Nick has more.
sentences. The clerical staff jumped on board with the IBW, which for those of you who don't know, it's International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. That contract that they've been in for the last 15 years, it's like putting cherries in an apple pie. It just doesn't fit, at least in my opinion. I don't like cherries, but they're dealing with, they're dealing with different things, safety issues, and when they're on line work, well, here it didn't fit into the contract. So this in a roundabout way will actually make things easier to negotiate with these different unions when they come time. Because we're not two different groups needing two different things.
Yeah, that is a good point. It's DPW Electric have different hours, different duties, different responsibilities and scheduling the needs, and it's different than administration and clerical work in City Hall. So it makes sense. And a lot of other cities have unions broken up that way. Very few have clerical staff just like this on IBEW or with electric and DPW. So.
Are the PTO always typical of a contract like this? I don't have anything to compare.
Yeah.
They are. One thing is also, there's been this transition in many places from, breaking things down between sick leave, vacation leave, and personal time versus I think the last previous contract combined everything in a personal time. So it's pretty typical, but there's still some places that do it the old way or the way of having sick and work and vacation.
Can they take the whole thing at one time or like,
No.
if they have,
No.
it's gotta be broken up? Okay.
Yeah,
That's
and
why I
there's
didn't-
some language, if you read through this even after tonight,
Yeah,
where there's only a limited amount of us in this building, so you can't have
Yeah,
multiple,
somebody's
it's 4th of
taking
July, we're all gonna be gone.
45 days of PTO at one
Right.
time or something.
So, yeah, there's language that have coverage here.
Yeah,
They
that's,
accumulate PTO at a certain rate.
Right.
Is there a limit to how much accrual?
Yeah.
What is it?
I think it is 900 hours.
It's 900 for the clerical here, 964. That's what they can carry over from year to year. Basically, it takes short-term disability.
Correct.
It allows them to get through this, because we don't currently have short-term disability, allows them to have enough time off to take care of their short-term disability to get to long-term. Hopefully I'm speaking it right.
But they do hit a limit at which point it's use or lose.
Correct.
yeah. So this is on a yearly basis, how much they can get paid out for PTO on a yearly basis. And then we have the,
Okay.
which is at 14.
What I can remember in discussions, it was cheaper years ago for the city to provide long-term disability with this 6-month accumulation of time off to bridge that gap versus short-term disability.
And that makes sense. And then your comment about the city will have the ability to reduce the PTO payout if they just don't show up
That's a
in the last 2 weeks, and that sounds logical. But wouldn't that happen anyway? If they don't show up, they don't get paid for those hours, so they would eat into their PTO.
No, this has been an issue not only here, but in other places that I've audited in the past where somebody says, all right, I'm at my 20 whatever years, I'm out. Well, rather than losing any of their accumulated time, okay, we're just gonna take 4 months off. Well, as it was, we couldn't say no. So there's nobody there. I can't fill the position, or the city can't, because we're still paying. Now we need somebody to stay there and train during the transition. So it was difficult to manage. Or now, if you increase that payoff a little bit, down to a different percentage, then that person will be there.
Yeah,
No,
so,
that make, I
yeah,
just wanted to understand the mechanics of that. And then you said there will no longer be benefits after termination.
not for new hires after
For
June
new
1st.
hires. How much of a recruitment problem does that create?
No one knows about this when they get hired. It's a
That's
benefit.
been
Just-
a
just-
thing here at the
Whenever you
city.
take something away, it's a potential.
Well, it is, but the post-retirement benefits such as healthcare, as much as I'd like to use it to be able to attract people, it's become a very, very rare thing to have in a business. And now the way our government is requiring us to report our financials, I have to recognize that. So if I have 23 employees that are getting that, they're telling me my liability, city's liability going forward is several $1 million. So then I have to start taking money out of the city coffers and setting it aside in a trust or in a different fund that can't be touched.
Oh, no, this is a common practice. Big corporations have
It
almost
is.
gone under because of the.
And by doing so, if we were able to maybe increase the wage just a little bit to get in the middle of the road where everybody else is in the state, get rid of that, we're still gonna save more money than trying to provide benefits. Do I want to give it up for future employees? No, but
And the way it's
I'm
written.
just curious what the logic, the discussion had been to get to that point.
And, part of it is, our current system is if you work 5 years, you get 1 year of post-retirement health benefits. So someone who's worked here 30 years, they get 6 years of health insurance in their retirement, which adds to tens of thousands of dollars.
especially at that, once you get to
From the
the age,
general fund.
obviously your premiums are through the roof, so.
No, it makes sense.
So yeah, no, it was part of the negotiations though, they wanted slightly more pay for in the seniority. For seniority, it's a give and take. We have to look at fiscal stability, and that's one of the things that we can look at long-term, because that's what we've been trying to hammer along is our long-term outlook is just as important as our short-term outlook here. And we're fine in the short term, but long-term is you never know. And so,
It had never been an issue because it was a pay-as-you-go. I look back through the decades and you'd never have anybody more than 1 or 2 persons drawing post-retirement health care. And that was fine. We just paid it as when it was absorbed in the monthly annual budget. But now for Governmental Accounting Standards Board to say, you need to set aside $2.5 million for somebody that is maybe going to work here 30 years or maybe not. And I'm not comfortable with that.
Thank you.
so I guess my main question out of all of this is how do you feel about the hours for City Hall? Because that's going to affect, and I guess that we have some public here. I don't know how that affects them too, but from, like I said, from observational, we don't get many people from after 4:30. We do get people coming in between 4 and 4:30 more so than 4:30 and 5. There's people who work till 5 and we're not open for them, so that's.
But on the same token, with an hour lunch for the staff, I mean, if somebody's coming in here, they're coming in to talk to Tina for her utilities or
Yeah.
Patty for voting or whatnot. And they maybe only have a half hour for lunch. So even though we're gonna not have that person available this time, it's gonna be more condensed during the day where those people may be here when they need them. So it's all over the board, 8 to 5, 8:30 to 4:30 is the one that makes most sense to me. An hour lunch, I mean, you can do 50 laps around the whole city and you still have 40 minutes to burn. So at least I'd rather have people here.
Right. Yeah, half-hour lunch is plenty.
Sounds like it should be
Proposing
open
is
till 4.
practically, from practical observation.
Yeah.
You feel comfortable with this?
I do. I hesitated, the question was 8 to 4. I hesitated about 8 to 4 a little bit, because it's just closing that early. Being open early was a benefit. I know we have, average age in this community is in the 60s and they like to get up earlier. So they get their work done earlier, which might be fine. I've gotten.
I tried to get in here at 8:30 this morning. I didn't have my key. I'm like, shit.
I would think as long as you're open till 4:30 from what you've said,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that if it's 8 to 4:30,
I
that's
think it's
fine.
fine.
I don't think it's gonna affect them.
No, I don't think it'll have an
Yeah,
effect.
extra half hours.
No.
8:30 to 4:30. You know, and we can, will be a contract, but if we get tremendous amounts of pushback from the community, then obviously we're gonna have to.
Suggest.
But the overall proposal addresses issues that you've been talking about for a very long time.
Yes. And I like these 5-year contracts as opposed to a 2 or 3, because then it's easier to plan. I know who's gonna be making what, and I can budget 5 years out.
Well, there is one, I didn't put it as a main highlight or change, but it was, I neglected to, sorry, it was that the annual pay increase, the last contract was 3%. Here would be 3 to 5% depending on the CPI, on the cost of living increase. So that was one concern they had with, the past couple of years have been a significant
Right.
increase in cost of living. And so we provided with a cap though, that we wouldn't go above 5% because we can't, sometimes the CPI is going to be 9%, maybe 10, we just can't do that.
So there's a formula.
Yeah, the Bureau of Labor Statistics does that. And that's how we would base ours off.
And I've reached out to some other contracts that are different cities and townships and even the sewer authority that are ongoing, that seems to be a big thing, is we want to be able to figure out with this inflation situation.
Well, at that point, it becomes a retention tool.
Yeah. It's gonna take time, and we didn't approve this next go around. I mean,
Can bring back the final, once I hear back from the police administrative assistant, and bring back a final copy at the next meeting if you have any changes from now until then or suggestions or hear anything.
this would be a June starting date, so we got some time.
Yeah, so it sounds like that should get resolved anyway. So we're gonna bring it back.
Yeah, wait till May.
A lot of work in there.
A lot of work from a lot of people. All right. Thanks. Okay, finally moving on to the city manager's report. We're coming to here. So we are applying for technical assistance from the MEDC to cover up 75% of our professional service costs to update our zoning code. So we had a meeting with the RRC regional representative, Pablo, and he said, hey, you guys are updating your zoning code. There's grant money available to do that. And so I didn't. So we said, thank you. So we just have to apply and there'll be a grant agreement form, but they'll pay up to 75% of our service costs. We are estimating it costs about $30,000 to update the zoning code for professional services from Beckett and Rader. So 75% coverage is about $24,000. So it'd be huge if we're gonna spend the money anyway, so. Police department, this is for Kyle, seeking a seasonal marine enforcement officer. If you know anyone, please see Chief Knight or visit our employment page for more information. Remember, council approved this earlier this year to have a more permanent presence in the summer on the water. Spring brush and leaf pickup begins this week. Technically, I don't know if they got out there yet today, but the weather is kind of, but it starts this week.
I saw them out there. They're out there.
And also, we are preparing plans to reinstall the playground equipment back in its original location on the sand with the donated money. I got word that money is available. We're just waiting on final plans from the playground contractor that we're using to make sure to fit in the surface, ADA accessible surface in the sand.
It's not literally reinstalling it in the sand.
No, it's gonna be.
It's the location
Yes.
on what is now safe.
Yeah, it would be yeah. So in the original location with the surface on the sand, yeah. So we're just waiting we got some preliminary details. We're just getting some permanent ones. So hopefully we're having a May install, so. And some meetings. course, the Parks Board met, talked about the Zorn Park Playground, Easter egg hunt, and DNR grant applications. It'll be a few months before we hear anything from those DNR grant applications. We also, DDA reviewed the Merchants Walkway, Third Street lighting and joint meeting plans. We are planning to do a joint meeting between council, planning commission, the DDA, and the Chamber of Commerce on May 22nd at 6 p.m. to talk about economic development. And it's really gonna, it's also gonna be a way for, it's not gonna be so much, it's gonna be a noticed meeting, but it's not gonna be like formal like it is here. It's gonna be more like a forum to talk about, what our, how we achieve our goals for economic development, how we work together and collaborate to achieve some of those goals to benefit both the businesses, visitors, and the residents who live here. So it's kind of one way, it's gonna be one way to, a different way to get the community together that might not actually come to these meetings, to hear their voices and to get some of our boards that might not necessarily meet together a lot, to have them come together and talk about issues. The plan is for it to be at the Holy Childhood Community Hall, Monday, May 22nd. So we'll have some material out for that in the coming week. Zoning board reviewed its bylaws and extended a previous variance request. And then, of course, the RRC committee discussed the board recruitment application process, this joint meeting, as well as we're going to start working on a marketing plan. And typical meetings here, MMEA, MPPA usually are half my meeting time. And we did meet with Pablo, as I said, and also the housing director, our county-wide housing director, for a potential grant for a rural readiness opportunity. It's called a rural readiness grant. It might even be able to be used, we're still looking into it, to fund that position itself, the housing director. We have committed $10,000 to for the next year, so.
That would be interesting.
Yeah. But can't think of any other project right now that we would be able to fit in that grant, but. So that's one thing that we're looking at. Lucas and I met with Andrea. That's one thing we're looking at. Questions, thoughts?
So wasn't Andrea supposed to come in and give us a
Yep, she will.
update someday?
Yeah. She did last year.
Did she?
Yeah. Yep, and then she's gonna come again this year sometime.
A boardwalk update for anybody that's interested. Foundations are complete and wood construction, weather permitting, starts tomorrow. So we're ahead of schedule right now, so.
And we are still taking donations. Cora from Little Trevor's Tile Works is actually using our logo to put on tiles, and $10 of each sale is gonna go to the boardwalk. So I have a sample in my city office. In my office. You can look at that too, but we'll display it out here as well. They're pretty cool. So.
Do we have a time frame on the road work up here? Do we have any idea?
Memorial Day, I think was the last thing I heard.
They said before Memorial Day, they were hoping, they're hoping before then, but a lot of it's weather dependent.
They're moving right along.
Yeah, they are. I actually walked through the swamp, part of the swamp last week with grandkids to see it from down below. It's quite a project.
How about the 119 North?
We don't know. They were still waiting to resolve some legal issues with getting some, basically what they did here, got easement from us. They want to do that from some of the residents there to be able to do that. So they have to go through the legal process for that. Yeah.
But that easement is the association.
Well, it's part of it might be, but also part of it is there's one individual who owns separately from the association
Okay.
a strip of land.
Well, that's right, there's that one narrow. But no,
No,
timeline
we don't
at
have a
this point.
timeline yet. Last time when we went to that update with them in February, it was, probably they'll know by this fall when we'll have a timeline. So I'm gonna assume it's gonna be a spring next year. But I don't want to make assumption. Say that's for sure, but. Yeah, I did that already once.
Okay. New or old?
Good.
good.
Okay. Thank you all for coming. This meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.